to John Redmann, Power of Attorney, the show that empowers you with legal input and insights. With the November 3rd presidential election now fast approaching, I'm sure you couldn't help notice or escape the non-stop political ads on TV, radio, and print. As part of our mission to empower our viewers, we are proud to continue our tradition of providing interviews of the candidates. Part 1 of today's show includes our interviews of the candidates running for our Louisiana Supreme Court. And Part 2 has the candidates running for a judgeship on the family court in Orleans Parish. Other election forums on the way include candidates for election to judgeships in Orleans Parish, Jefferson Parish, and St. Bernard Parish. Also, you can access our shows and other election forums via the show's website or by searching on Google or YouTube. We want to remind everyone to be safe when they go out to vote and be mindful of current COVID guidelines, and check your trusted sources for updates on what's happening with mail-in voting and for in-person voting. We will be right back to start our interviews with the candidates for the Louisiana Supreme Court race: Judge Terri Love, Judge Sandra Cabrina Jenkins, and Judge Piper Griffin. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We are privileged to have on our show the candidates for the Louisiana Supreme Court, who are already judges who have distinguished themselves in their careers. So, what is the Supreme Court of the state of Louisiana? Since time is short, I'll say this: it is the highest state court in the land. The cases decided by the Louisiana Supreme Court often end up having the effect of law across the entire state of Louisiana. This can affect people, businesses, cities, municipalities, or industries, or pretty much anything, anybody. Also including matters of life and death in criminal matters. So how laws are applied and how the court procedures are applied, these are all things that the Louisiana Supreme Court can impact. It just matters whether or not it makes it up to the Louisiana Supreme Court, which is yet a whole other discussion. So let's get to the interview portion of the show. Before the show, we determined by random selection the order in which our guests will appear on the show. And that first guest today is the Honorable Terri Love. Judge Love is a native of Birmingham, Alabama. She received a Juris Doctor from Tulane University's School of Law in 1986. In 2004, Judge Love received her Master of Law degree in the judicial process from the University of Virginia. She is currently a judge on the Louisiana Fourth Circuit Court of Appeal. She also appeared on this show previously discussing with me the Court of Appeals process. Welcome, Judge Love. Welcome back, and thank you for participating in this special election forum.
Well, it is truly a pleasure to be here with you, and it gives me great honor to be able to discuss my candidacy for the Louisiana Supreme Court today.
Well, it's such an important race. So much important matters are decided in the Supreme Court. So let's get right to it, shall we?
Yes.
Okay, first question. Would you give us a brief summary of your legal education and work experience that you believe has helped prepare you to be an Associate Justice on the Louisiana Supreme Court?
Well, first of all, one of the things I'm most proud of is some legislative work which I performed. In 1993, I was called upon by Mayor Mark Morial, 1994, to be the lead author of the City of New Orleans' first domestic violence ordinance. And that ordinance is in place, and it is very impactful today for those who are victims of domestic violence. And in 1993, I entered the judiciary as a hearing officer in juvenile court. In 1995, I was elected to the Civil District Court for the Parish of Orleans, where I served for 5 years. In 2000, I was elected to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeal, where I have served for the past 20 years. I've authored over 700 appellate opinions, and I've addressed over 2,000 interlocutory matters. But one of the things I'm most proud of is my post-law school judicial education. By returning to law school as a judge, that was a very trying time. 2 summers in Virginia for 6 weeks of extensive classes, but I now have an LLM in the judicial process. I also studied at New York University, Brookings Institute, the National Judicial College, and at The Hague in the Netherlands. And I've served in many administrative capacities. And I believe that experience has uniquely prepared me to be the next justice on the Louisiana Supreme Court.
Well, thank you for that very detailed response. Along those lines, our next question asks, what sets you apart from the other candidates, two other judges? How would you distinguish yourself and your background and experience from the other candidates running for the same position?
I'm the only candidate in the race who has served as a judge on the trial court and the appellate court. I'm the only judge in the race who has obtained post-law school judicial education internationally and nationally. And as a result of my seniority in the judiciary, I've served in many administrative capacities with the court. I was the lead author of our court's continuation of authorization plan after Katrina, and also I served as the lead author and organizer of our reentry plan during this pandemic. I've served on the Louisiana Judicial Council, which is the research arm of the Supreme Court, and by being on the Fourth Circuit for 20 years, I've addressed the budgetary matters that the court would face if I'm elected to become a justice.
Okay. Next question. Many believe the public's faith in our political institutions and even our courts and our judges has gone down considerably in recent times. What can you tell our viewers and voters about how you intend to treat them and their legal disputes if given the opportunity to sit in judgment of them on the highest court in Louisiana?
Well, as part of my 3 administrative goals, if elected justice on the Supreme Court, the first goal is I have been certified by the Louisiana State Bar Association as an instructor for adults in civic education. I would like to increase that partnership with the Supreme Court and with the Bar Association to make sure that lawyers are out to the public explaining law and civic education. That's one of the things that I think some of our young people are missing now is civic education. The second thing is, I believe for there to be confidence in the judicial process, there must be timely resolution and just resolution of all actions. And it must be transparent. That was one of the first things I've learned. Transparency gives confidence. I am proposing creating a task force to study judicial delays in the system and make sure that we are in line with national averages or that we exceed national averages. I'm proud to say that as far as my own records, I've researched it, and from the date of submission to date of issuing, I'm averaging 30 days, which I believe is a good set of standards, and I would like to make sure that the state is in line with those national standards. And finally, I think the means to improve that also is through technology. We've learned through this pandemic the role that technology can play. And I think that if we can use technology to open the court system up more for the public, then that will create a greater confidence.
Great. Next question. And this one is a not too complicated one. Please remind our viewers your ballot number and where they can find more information about you and your platform.
Well, my ballot number is 50. I am Judge Terri Love, and my Facebook and my website are Judge Terri Love. Please join us and please follow me, and I'm always looking forward to meeting anyone in the community. Now we're very limited, but please follow me on Facebook. Please follow and like me on Facebook. Again, number 50 on the ballot.
All right, we're doing good on time, so I have another, the next question is, if you would like to, is there any topic or specific area that you believe is important that the viewers know about you? I know you've mentioned some of your platform items. Is there something that I have not asked you about yet that you think this is something I want to share with the viewers?
My work in the community.
Let's hear about that.
Well, my passion is mentorship for our young people. I've served as a mentor for numerous organizations here in the community. I believe our youth are our most valuable natural resource. And I think that if they can learn at an early age the value of the judicial system, and if I can encourage them with life skills, one of the first tasks I had on the Fourth Circuit was the creation of a summer's jobs program. It was something I brought to the court. And all of the judges at that time were not in favor of the program. But I was able to convince them, and we've had an excellent program with a strong focus on mentorship and exposure. Also, I am very engaged in community activism. For the past 2 years, the mayor has tasked me with chairing our Martin Luther King Holiday Commission. And anytime I can expose our young people and the community of the work of Dr. King and his legacy, I'm always humbled by that opportunity.
And it seems like in these kind of crazy days, the wisdom of Martin Luther King, a lot of us could use that right now.
We sure could, and his commitment and his unselfish giving of himself, like so many of those great civil rights leaders, and also by so many of the great jurors who stand before me. I was strongly influenced by the late Justice Revius Ortiz and the late Judge Israel Augustine, who played a major role in my grooming as a young lawyer to prepare me for the judiciary. And I've always honored and watched Chief Justice Johnson for her work, because her commitment to equality is beyond measure. And I could never step into her shoes. Those are some big shoes to fill.
Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to create my own work legacy of a commitment to equal justice, because the Supreme Court is the ultimate ensurer of justice. That's why you're not even called a judge, you're a justice. And so I take that awesome responsibility. And I take it seriously now as a judge on the Fourth Circuit, but I see it raising me to another standard as a justice on the Louisiana Supreme Court.
I wish I could talk more with you about that, but in the limited time we have, we've got time for one brief comment, and that is, can you point to a moment in your career where when you had to make a tough decision, maybe one that was politically unpopular or that might have put you in an uncomfortable position, where you had to make a decision which might further demonstrate more about you and who you are as a person and a leader? If you could share something like that with us.
Well, I think one of those decisions, and it comes often, is when it's involving young people. I have such a love for young people. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, and I just believe that any cases involving young people that can be impactful on their life, it's always something that I take very seriously. And I've had several cases involving students where there were allegations with problems and they were removed from school. And I don't want to go into any detail on it, but those type of cases really give me a lot to think about. And some of those cases out of juvenile court involving young people who is clear that there was just a lack of guidance at home. And the law has to step in. And I'm always prayerful that the law stepping in can give that guidance and put that child on the right track.
Well, Judge Love, thank you so much for being with us here today, answering all these questions that give us a little bit more insight into who you are as a judge and as a candidate for the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. We're going to have to end this segment here. At this time, we're going to conclude the segment. We will be right back to continue on with our show with our next candidate, Judge Sandra Cabrina Jenkins. Everybody stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We now welcome the Honorable Sandra Cabrina Jenkins, who is also seeking your vote for the Louisiana Supreme Court. Judge Jenkins is currently a judge on the Louisiana Fourth Circuit Court of Appeal. She earned her Juris Doctor from Southern University Law Center in 1984. Welcome to the show, Judge Jenkins.
Thank you, John. I'm excited for the opportunity to be here.
Well, good. We're glad you could make it here with us. So we want to make full use of our time, so I'm going to get right to the questions. Okay, you ready? So first question. We would like you to give us a brief summary of your legal education and work experience that you believe has helped prepare you to be an Associate Justice on the Louisiana Supreme Court.
Well, in 1989, when I graduated from law school, my first job offer and only job offer was as an Assistant District Attorney in Orleans Parish. I accepted the job, moved here, and got right to work the Monday after I got sworn in. So my first 3 years of practice was as an Assistant District Attorney in Orleans Parish. I finally made it to trial assistant, meaning that I was the first chair for particular sections of court, tried over 100 cases, jury and judge trial. I served in juvenile court, felony trials, and then finally I ended up in screening. After that, I actually served at the Fourth Circuit as a staff attorney for 5 years. After that, I opened my own practice. So over the 23 years of practice before I was elected, I mastered skills as a trial attorney, an appellate counsel, and now serving for the last 8 years as an appellate court judge, writing opinions, which I'm assuming is over hundreds of civil and criminal law opinions, as well as writ dispositions. So those things qualify me to serve as an Associate Justice.
Okay, well, thank you for providing that insight. My next question, what do you believe sets you apart from the other candidates who are currently running for this same position?
As I mentioned, I practiced law for 23 years prior to election. The bulk of my practice was as a criminal defense attorney. When you look at the Louisiana Supreme Court and many courts, it's very seldom you find that a judge came from the criminal defense bar. And that's important because many of the cases that are found in the Louisiana Supreme Court are criminal in nature. So I believe that there has to be diversity in experience, and diversity in experience is what we bring to the table from our practice as lawyers, our personal, our community. All of that is very important in judicial deliberation. So my opponents do not have that background of criminal defense. I'm not sure as prosecutors either. Most of the judges that are elected to the Louisiana Supreme Court come from the civil bench and or civil practitioners. And that's the tradition on the Louisiana Supreme Court. And to me, it does not make sense to continue to stack the court with the same experience that we've had for decades and centuries. And I believe that my background in criminal law as a trial attorney, as an appellate counsel, as a prosecutor is going to be very beneficial to the body of law that I think will continue to be developed with criminal law reform.
Okay, thank you for that answer. That leads me to my next question. Many believe the public's faith in our political institutions, and yes, even our courts and our judges, has gone down considerably in recent times. So what can you tell our viewers and our voters about how you intend to help address this and how you would deal with legal disputes if you are given the opportunity to sit in judgment of them if you are elected to the highest state court in Louisiana?
That's a great question, because if there are several things going on. First of all, over the last couple of years, there have been many headlines about transparency of the Louisiana Supreme Court and discipline of judges. Now we are not just in the middle of a pandemic, but a pandemic of social and racial unrest. So people are crying out for change. People are looking to the criminal justice system for justice. And it's very important that the public feel comfortable with the person that's going to be able to replace Chief Justice Johnson, who's been there for 26 years. Louisiana has 7 districts. There are 6 men currently sitting on the bench, and they're all Republican. I'm a Democrat. And yes, we can talk about partisanship or bipartisanship in our races, but besides the diversity in our parties, you have to look at the fact that Louisiana has had a stain on its reputation as relates to mass incarceration. We had to be one of the last 2 states that the U.S. Supreme Court had to tell us that a 10-2 verdict is not constitutional. And when I followed that particular argument from, I would say, 2013, I had one of my first criminal cases that was assigned to me to write, and that was one of the issues. And in my opinion, I noted that the issues raised are compelling. However, I am bound by our Louisiana Supreme Court. And my thought process when I thought about and read Ramos versus Louisiana, I was quite impressed with how the U.S. Supreme Court went into the history, the legislative history of the statute as to why our state elected to allow a 10-2 verdict and not have a unanimous jury verdict. And it had to do with racism and the systemic racism of that from the centuries and centuries is why the U.S. Supreme Court had to finally tell our court, our state, that no, this is unconstitutional. And I honestly believe that it's easier for me to see issues that I don't mind taking that step and writing a dissent, even though the body of law in our state does not follow, or I'm not following that body of law. And that's okay to write dissents, but you can't write a dissent if you don't have that experience that comes with practicing as a criminal defense attorney, having clients, going to jails, making sure that the livelihood and the well-being of your clients is taken care of. So that also is something that distinguishes me, and hopefully that will help the public have confidence in our criminal justice system.
Thank you for that very detailed answer, but I think it's so important. And just to be sure everybody is understanding some of the lingo you use, yes. A 10-2 verdict, that's where in this state, almost unique except for one other state, where people could be sent to prison for the rest of their lives based on a jury verdict of 10 in favor of convicting and 2 being opposed to convicting, whereas in the rest of the country and in federal court, correct, you needed a unanimous verdict. And that really was a stain. I like that choice of words there. A stain, yes, on our reputation as a state that doesn't treat people the way almost the rest of the country did. Well, I wish we could talk for another 30 minutes about that or more, but let me get to my next question. Okay. The limited time remaining, if you could take a minute and tell us anything in particular you would like to tell our voters and viewers that I haven't specifically asked you about.
Well, I'm very excited for the opportunity again. It's been 26 years since there has been a justice to be elected to this position. And this district covers Orleans Parish, Gretna, Harvey, Marrero, and West Wego, not the entire, all of those cities entirely. But it's an opportunity for me to be able to serve at a time when we do have unrest in our judicial system seems to not be as favorably viewed as we would like it to be viewed. I believe that there are 4 to 5 priorities for the Louisiana Supreme Court. Opinion writing is one. Second is discipline of lawyers and discipline of judges. Also the admission of new attorneys. And finally, behavioral health courts. That's something that I'm very passionate about in our community, in our criminal justice system, in our court system, not just criminal court, because we find that there are issues of addictions and things that are affecting our families, and we need to address them as opposed to criminalize it. So behavioral health courts is a great priority for me if I'm elected to serve.
Wonderful. Well, we're just about out of time, but we do have time for this important question. Yes. Would you remind our viewers what your ballot number is and what your website is, how they can find out more about you and your campaign?
Okay, my website is sandrajenkins.com. And if you go to my website, there is a link that says get involved. So if you want to volunteer, if you want a yard sign, or just want to find out any more information about me and my candidacy, you can go straight there. I'm number 48 on the ballot. Again, I'm Sandra Cabrina Jenkins. Thank you.
Judge Jenkins, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show and learn more about you. Unfortunately, that's it. We're out of time. Time runs really quickly. Yes. But I'll ask our viewers to please stick around. After another short break, we will be interviewing the Honorable Judge Piper Griffin, and we will be right back. Stick around. Welcome back. We now welcome the Honorable Piper Griffin, the last but not least of the Supreme Court candidates. Judge Griffin is from New Orleans. She received her Juris Doctorate in 1987 from LSU Law School. Judge Griffin has served as a judge on the Orleans Parish Civil District Court Division for the past 20 years. Prior to becoming a judge, she handled complex litigation, both plaintiff and defense. Judge Griffin, welcome to Power of Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Redmann, for having me. I truly appreciate the opportunity.
Well, we are grateful to have you here and to let our viewers get to know a little bit more about you. So how about we get straight to the questions?
Sure.
All right, let's do it. First question. Would you give us a brief summary of your legal education and work experience that you believe has helped prepare you to be an Associate Justice on the Louisiana Supreme Court?
As you mentioned, I finished from LSU in 1987. I then practiced law, doing both plaintiff and defense work, primarily defense, but a little bit of both, for right at 15 years. I then was appointed at one point to juvenile court ad hoc and was appointed pro tem to civil district court. I got elected in 2001 and have since then been on the civil district court. At the civil district court, I manage what I consider a tight ship. I have a very efficient docket. I think I'm respected amongst my peers and amongst lawyers because of the way I manage my court, handling all the type of litigation that comes to civil district court. In addition, I've not only managed my docket, I've taken time to be involved. I am the immediate past president of the Louisiana Judicial Council, which is the African American lawyers here in the state. I'm the current second vice president of the District Judges Association. I'm the immediate past president of the 4th and 5th Circuit Judges, which is the judges in this area. I also am previously the chief judge of my court, and I serve on several different committees for the Supreme Court. I serve on the Budgetary Control Committee, which is the committee that deals with the budget of all of the state courts to the extent that they receive funding from the Supreme Court. I serve on judicial ethics, and I serve currently on the Committee on Bar Admissions as the previous examiner for constitutional law, which I did for about 10 years, several years ago. I say all that to say that we all know that the Supreme Court is the highest court of the state. But the Supreme Court not only writes opinions, but they administer the entire court system. And so what I will tell you is I think that the leadership that I've shown by the things that I've done within the bench and bar and also the administrative work I've done makes a big difference. All of the people in this race can do the writing of opinions. We're all basically qualified to be a justice on the Supreme Court in that respect. The question is who can do all of the things holistically, what the Supreme Court does as a court, our highest court in the state.
Thank you for that. Let me get to the next question. What do you believe sets you apart from the other candidates? I think you partly answered that, but can you add anything further? Do you believe there's anything else you think that you would like to add, since that's the follow-up question?
Yeah, in addition to that, I think that we all understand that there are 7 votes on the Supreme Court. And I think one of the things that's very important for any justice on the Supreme Court is being able to work well with the justices that are there. And I know all of them. They've appointed me, as I indicated, many of them, not all of them were there when I was appointed to these various committees, but I've worked with them. And so I think to some extent, they will have some knowledge of my work ethic, some knowledge of the things that I'm capable of doing. And that makes a difference, I think, when you're trying to get people to come to some agreement as relates to what should be the outcome of a case.
Okay. Next question. As you know, or as you may or may not agree, but I think most people believe the public's faith in our political institutions and even our courts and judges has gone down considerably in recent times. What can you tell our viewers about how you might address that and how you would treat anyone in their legal disputes and handle yourself if given the opportunity to sit in judgment of them in the highest court in Louisiana?
Well, for one thing, I think that it is very important that we give everyone who comes before us the respect that they're due. And everyone, every human being is due the same amount of respect regardless of what their station in life is. And so I believe that, and I've done that in my court, and I think that I will continue to do that, know that I will continue to do that on the Supreme Court. I also think that the Supreme Court, as our highest court, has an absolute responsibility to make sure that we take every effort to educate judges and make sure that judges deal with any issues that they may tend to have, because we all come to our positions in life with certain biases, but be prepared to understand and appreciate those biases and do the things necessary to not allow them to become a part of our judgment.
Okay. Next question. Can you point to a moment in your career where you had to make a tough decision, a tough call as an attorney or a judge that threatened to impact the life of another person or a client that maybe was unpopular, that would have been an unpopular decision, or maybe went against the popular opinion, and you might have had to take some heat for it, that sort of demonstrates who you are as a person and how you would be as a justice on the Supreme Court?
I think probably the most recent case that I can recall is the Entergy decision, and I hate bringing it up because it's good. Some people are happy with it, some people are not so happy with the decision I made, and basically that has to do with that Entergy plant that is being built, I think, at some point. I'm not sure exactly what the status is, out in New Orleans East. And it had to do with a conversation about having put paid actors in the city council chambers. And you know, obviously there are very good arguments on both sides. My job is to look at the law, look at the facts, and render a decision based on that facts. I call balls and strikes. And so that was a very difficult time for me because I understood that there was a lot of not political conversation about it, but there was a lot of public conversation about it. And so, and the public doesn't always understand the law. That's part of the problem, is that the public only sees what it sees, and it said this is right and this is wrong. And so for me, my role to call the ball or call a strike is to make sure that I understand the facts and make sure that I apply the law as I see the law. And that's what I did. And so it was difficult in the sense that I knew that no matter what I did, and I had friends on both sides of the coin as well, you know, so no matter what, I was going to make some friend angry. And no matter what, I was going to make some citizen angry you got me. So and that was a very, not a tough thing to do, but I think what I did was looked at the facts, applied the law to the facts. And as long as I can do that, I can look myself in the mirror and go to sleep at night.
Okay, thank you for that example. Is there, we're running low on time at this point. In the few moments we do have remaining, is there anything else that you would like to share? Something I haven't touched on yet or haven't gone into, asked you about yet, that you would like to share with our viewers to help them understand more about you? Something, some topic we haven't covered yet.
Probably the main thing that I would share is, if you look at my credentials, if you take a time and look at my bio, what you'll find is that I have always been committed to the community where I grew up. I've always been committed to scholarly education. I'm one of the people who speaks often at CLE's, Continuing Legal Educational Forums. And I speak often on all kinds of topics. And I would tell you that I am one who is committed to not just children, but the community at large. I've served as a mentor to lawyers, to high school students, and to people in general, just trying to make sure that people have an opportunity. Because that's what people lack often in their lives, is they have the gifts, they have the talents, but they don't have the opportunity to have those flourish. I'm a former foster mother, which I'm not former, I still have a child. You know, children never go away. He's grown now, and that's why I say former. But he's grown and he lives in Houston. And, you know, nurturing children, and especially those that are not your own, and taking care of people that are not your own. I have a deep abiding faith. I'm active at my church. And so I think most people know that about me, but I like to remind people that that's where my decision making, my values come from, my beliefs. And my activity level in my church is significant because of that. And my activity level in whatever I do, and the things that I've done, I do them because I truly, truly think to whom much is given, much is required. And I think that it is my obligation to try to make a difference wherever I am, in whatever life that I can.
Well, thank you for that answer. We just have a very short bit of time left, but this is an important question. Would you please remind our viewers what your ballot number is and your website address is?
Sure. My name is Piper Griffin. I am candidate number 49, and you can find out more about me at piperforjustice.com. Thank you very much.
Great. So people can go to your website, they can learn more about your platform and get information if they want to get involved. And I'm afraid at this point now we have run out of time in this segment of the show. Judge Griffin, thank you so much for joining us today, answering all these questions. It's been a pleasure, and I hope that our viewers have had a real opportunity to get to know more about you, your candidacy, and your hopes and aspirations if elected to serve on the Supreme Court.
Thank you, Mr. Redmann. I appreciate you having me here.
Okay. That's all the time we have to cover the candidates for the Supreme Court race. Part 2 of our special election forum with the candidates for Civil District Court Domestic Relations Section 1 is next. We will be right back. Welcome back to the show. We now pivot to the Orleans Parish Civil District Court Domestic Relations Section judges race. By coin toss selection, we will introduce you to the first candidate, also the incumbent in the race, the Honorable Bernadette D'Souza. Following Judge D'Souza, we will introduce you to her opponent, Attorney LaKeisha Jefferson. But first, a quick word about what happens in domestic relations law court. So, Orleans Civil District Court has 3 domestic relations court. This is DRS 1. All 3 handle the same types of cases, and all are known as family law courts, where domestic cases such as divorce, child custody, child support, also restraining orders related to domestic violence or protection of individuals, and or property and general community property disputes and other family law matters are heard. Our first guest, Bernadette D'Souza, received her Juris Doctor degree from Tulane University School of Law in 1992. Judge D'Souza was previously a practicing attorney in public interest law for over 18 years, many of them as a managing attorney of the Family Law and Domestic Violence Unit at Southeast Louisiana Legal Services. Judge D'Souza was also previously on this show discussing and explaining family court and what goes on there. By the way, if you have a case in family court, I encourage you to visit our website, johnredmannpoa.com, or find us on YouTube and learn so you can learn much about what to expect in these courts. There's some really helpful stuff in there. Well, thank you for being here today, Judge D'Souza. How about we get straight to the questions?
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So, if the past is the best predictor of the future, how about you tell us about your past experience, especially in handling family law cases? What have you done in handling such cases in your court, and what are some achievements that you feel proud of that you think the voters should be aware of? And what can anyone in your court expect from you in that court?
Okay. I dedicated my legal career in family law and domestic violence over 18 years. It prepared me well to come into public service. So now that I am on the bench, I am very familiar with the issues that come before me. I know with the experience I have gained, I have the knowledge of the law, and I've hit the ground running since I've been elected as the first family court judge at Civil District Court. My great achievements are the self-help desk, which I spearheaded as a lawyer with the CDC judges. And now that I'm on the bench, I have taken charge of being in touch with Pro Bono Project that really provide the volunteers to help litigants that can't afford a lawyer to come before me. The other program is an on-site services for victims of domestic violence through the Family Justice Center. The third program that I do is through the Total Community Action. Mayor Cantrell appointed me on the board of TCA. They have this wonderful program called Opportunity Center. They come into my court on Child Support Enforcement Day and find out if there are parents that need to be employed so they can pay their child support for their children. So they do job training and they do job search so they're gainfully employed. The fourth program, which I feel really proud of, is I initiated the relinquishment of firearms in my court. After making a finding of domestic violence, I used to have the deputy go over to wherever the perpetrators reside to go and pick up the weapons for during the pendency of the protection order. They're not supposed to use it, and now it's become the law in Louisiana. So these are the four programs that I have implemented and have been working really hard. But above all, my experience, the compassion that I have for families gives me the opportunity to take the time and really listen to what the challenges that the families are coming before me to make a difference in their lives.
Well, thank you for that in-depth explanation of achievements that you're proud of. And let's get to the next question. What is the most pressing issue facing family court today?
The most pressing issue, of course, is that 65% of litigants come without a lawyer. You know, with the self-help desk, while they do have the forms to file the petition, they still need some representation. And it is my hope in the future, through the Pro Bono Project, to see if we can develop a program where attorneys can then give pro bono services to our courts. The judges on the bench, we have judgments that have to be submitted timely. And if the judgments are not submitted timely, then we ask the lawyer to be assigned to the self-help desk to give some sort of help to people that can't afford a lawyer.
And you say pro bono, the pro bono project, and pro bono. Pro bono is a fancy lawyer word that means services for free.
Free, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Next question. What is your vision for the future of family court in New Orleans? What changes, if any, would you advocate and why?
The changes that I would advocate is to continue the work. You know, as last time I spoke to you about how I implemented mediation program. A lot of the cases that come before the court are very contentious. And I believe that in mediating some of these cases, you're giving the parties an opportunity to make a decision in the best interest of their children.
Now, some of our viewers might not have watched the program we did on using mediation in court. So you want to quickly explain what mediation is?
Mediation is actually you go before an attorney that is qualified mediator, and the two parties come to the table and discuss what the custody issues ought to be, and the mediator resolves it and prepares a mediated agreement, which is then submitted to the court in the form of a consent judgment that the parties have reached out of court.
And it's you being non-binding as opposed to arbitration.
That's correct.
So in other words, a lot of times it resolves a case, and it doesn't cost nearly what it would cost if you had two lawyers on each side fighting over it.
Litigating it, yes.
Okay. All right, next question. What do you believe sets you apart from the other candidate who is currently running for this same judgeship?
What sets me apart is my dedication and the experience that I have. Over 26 years, I started my career as a public interest lawyer. It prepared me well to be on the bench, and the fact that I was a law professor at Tulane teaching domestic violence and the law as it relates to family law cases. And so having developed that knowledge and experience and compassion for the families in handling cases at Southeast Louisiana Legal Services, where all my clients couldn't afford a lawyer, a private attorney. We represent them without free legal services were provided to them. And so I think that sets me apart because it has prepared me well to be in public service. And in my 9 years, I have truly hit the ground running, having had that knowledge and experience.
And one thing you said right at the very beginning, and I want to be sure our viewers caught it and understand it, you're the first, you're not the first judge in civil district court to handle domestic cases. You're the first permanently assigned judge, which is an important thing that has happened in our courts. 2 of the 3 domestic relations sections judges, they don't switch out to other sections. No, so if you're reelected, you're not going to be switched over to regular docket. You're going to stay in the domestic relations section.
Yeah.
Okay. We have time for another question, I believe. Would you please remind our viewers your ballot number and where they can find more information about you and your campaign platform?
Well, the viewers can always visit my website at www.bernadettedesouza.com. And I ask them to please vote for me, and my ballot number is 83.
Okay. Looks like we have time for, I think, one more question. In the short time we have remaining, is there anything in particular I didn't ask you about yet? Something that you feel you would like to share with the viewers? Something tells them a little bit more about you, something that you think, I think I'd like them to know this about me, when they're trying to make up their mind about who the better candidate is, or why you should continue to have the privilege of serving as a judge.
Okay. I am honored to be serving as the first family court judge, the permanent seat at Civil District Court. I came to this country as an immigrant, and I've been living in New Orleans for 42 years. I came as a young bride from India, having married my husband, And after I went to law school with 3 children and a husband, and after I graduated from Tulane Law School, I knew I wanted to be a public interest lawyer. I started my career at New Orleans Legal Assistance, which is now Southeast Louisiana Legal Services. And the work that I was doing there was so rewarding. I became so passionate. And if you recall, in domestic violence cases, there was a client of mine that was gunned down outside the courthouse in my presence. And I became so determined to teach that law at Tulane Law School to students, so there'll be a lot more lawyers that can go out and represent the victims of domestic violence. I want to thank you so very much for giving me this opportunity to come and speak about my platform and about the work I have been doing and wish to continue doing. Thank you.
Well, we're grateful to you for coming here and sharing your time and your words with us so people could get to know you. I am afraid, however, that we have simply run out of time for this segment. And at this time, I'm afraid we have to conclude this segment of the show. You are watching John Redmann, Power of Attorney. We will be right back after this break. Welcome back. Our next guest is attorney LaKeisha Jefferson. Ms. Jefferson is a native of Louisiana and an attorney in the greater New Orleans area with a concentration in family and domestic law. She received her JD from Southern University Law Center in 2003. As an attorney, LaKeisha has handled family law cases in the trial, appellate, and the Louisiana Supreme Court level. Thank you for being here, Ms. Jefferson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, it's our pleasure. So we have a bunch of questions for you. How about we jump right in?
All right.
All right, let's do it. First question. If the past is a predictor of the future, how about you tell us about your past experience, especially in handling family law cases? What have you done in handling such cases in court, and what are some of the achievements you think voters should be aware of? And what can you or anyone in your court, if you are elected, expect from you if they go before you?
Well, I started out my career as a judicial law clerk. It was not in the area of family law, however, but eventually I migrated into the area of family law, which I'm sure we'll talk about that a little later. But I found myself working for Southeast Louisiana Legal Services, where I got a great foundation learning how to actually have trial experience in that area. I also worked for Project SAVE, which is a public interest local law group where they assist victims of domestic violence with obtaining protective orders and emergency ancillary relief. And then I also was a prosecutor for the city attorney's office for almost 12 years, where I prosecuted offenders of domestic violence statutes. So I have a great deal of experience in that area. I got a great foundation as it relates to trial work and trial experience. And so just working with clients every day and understanding the plight that they face when they walk into a family courtroom is kind of, how I got into this, and just making sure that their needs are addressed and that they can get back to work and, take care of their families.
Okay. Thank you. Next question. What do you see as the most pressing issue facing family court today?
So I would say I think it's a tie between child custody litigation and how contentious it can be and how much of a strain it actually puts on the children that are in the middle. And I say that is a tie with domestic violence, because what we have right now is we've got Title 46, which in layman's terms, it's a statute that really kind of governs the protective orders themselves. So we're dealing with a lot of domestic violence, abuse, but then we also have the stalking component, which can translate into dating partners as well as parties who may have been married at one point, or sometimes as it relates to the stalking statute, it could just be kind of everyday citizens, neighbor disputes, things like that. So I'd say that I think some of the challenges that we face is that because there is an overabundance of cases, then you seeing like a slowing and a kind of clogging of the docket. So, but I think that there are creative ways that we all can kind of brainstorm and come up with to make certain that that doesn't happen, because the reality is, John, people have got to get out of court and back to work. And that's really one of my primary concerns.
Okay. Next question. What is your vision for the future of family court in New Orleans? What changes, if any, would you advocate for, and why?
Well, I think that one of the things is we've got to have more wraparound services. And I think that that is the vision that everybody has had, especially with the establishment of the Family Justice Center. For those who don't know what that is, the Family Justice Center is kind of a one-stop shop where victims and survivors can go to have all of their, not just their legal needs addressed, but also counseling and family therapy for their children. But we need more wraparound services like the Family Justice Center. So I think that with the use of the court system, especially in civil court, we already have a pilot program that was started for family law mediators. But I think that in addition to mediators, we need to have more wraparound services relative to family therapy, relative to other issues that are facing these families. And so I think that that involves a conversation, more communication between the courts, these other areas such as the Family Justice Center, other licensed counselors and professionals, and then also the other criminal court judges. So we have the criminal district court judges, and then we also have traffic and municipal judges, which also handle other domestic violence cases. And so oftentimes what I have seen is that there could be a gap, or let's say a hole that needs to be filled, right? So if I know that criminal court has issued, let's say, a stay-away order in connection with criminal prosecution, and then I have a civil protective order that issues a physical custody schedule, then if these two courts are not communicating, then what can happen is we could put a family in a situation where there's a violation of one of those orders if the criminal court judge doesn't know what the civil court judge is doing. And I've seen that in my practice a million times, where we may have to go in and contact the DA's office, let's say, to say, look, we have this physical custody schedule, tell me how that affects the criminal stay-away order so that there's no violation. So I'd say more communication between different agencies is what I think will bridge that gap.
And you would think, just to follow up on that, that in this age of computers, that, you know, that especially where someone is, it has to do with abuse or protection of children or abuse victims, that they ought to be able to figure out how to do that, right? And I hope that they figured it out in other cities. You know, you can look at how they solve that riddle in other places. But it sounds like a very intriguing idea. So next idea. Next question. What sets you apart from your opponent in this race?
So as I said, I've worked for a lot of different agencies, such as Project SAVE, such as the City Attorney's Office, such as Southeast Louisiana Legal Services. But in my own private practice, I often worked at those agencies at the same time as building my private practice. So I believe that I have a great deal of trial experience that I think translates well when you are transitioning to the bench. If you have, let's say, a candidate who doesn't have as much trial experience, then you don't understand the practicalities of when, let's say, a physical custody schedule is issued. You don't know how that kind of translates into the family's life, because you don't hear from them again unless and until there's, let's say, a motion filed or some sort of rule for contempt that may be filed. The court has no idea what's going on. And so I think that when you've not been a family court trial practitioner to the extent that I have been, then I think that there are things that maybe you just don't have the foresight to see. So I think that what sets me apart from my opponent is that not only do I bring real trial practical experience to this, to my qualifications and for this position, but I also have real life and real world experience that I think that I will bring to the bench as well. When you're dealing with, sometimes traditional families are not the way that we have seen them in the past. We have many more blended families that are coming into family court than there were before, and sometimes, as you know, our legislation just doesn't keep up with the way that society is changing, right? And so I come from a blended family where I had brothers and sisters who were moving in and out of the home well before there were actual, printed physical custody schedules. I mean, we're talking, I don't want to date myself, but we're talking, a good ways back. And even then, I had brothers and sisters who were coming in and out of the home on different custody schedules, and we had to adjust to that. And so because I've actually lived that myself, I believe that I will also bring real world practical experience to the bench as well.
Okay, well, we're starting to run short on time, so let's see if we can fit in maybe two more questions. Next question, can you point to a difficult decision in your personal or professional life that maybe you had to make a tough decision that was unpopular, maybe caused you some pushback that helps us understand how you would handle your position as a judge that affects people, and maybe kind of a shorter answer because I want to get to.
Sure, no problem.
I want to try and get to maybe one or two more.
Okay. So yes, I think that, dealing with family law cases is often that you will be faced with those kinds of decisions. It's not easy to look at a client and say, I understand emotionally what you mean and morally what your issue may be, but legally, this is what the law says, right? And so I had a case, which was the case that I've spoken about relative to my Supreme Court experience, that actually had to take a writ in the Supreme Court because the question was whether it was abuse versus discipline. And so it was a difficult decision for me to make, to encourage my client to not only appeal to the Fourth Circuit, but also to take it all the way to the Supreme Court for that particular issue, because although, the trial court didn't agree, I still believe, that he had the right to discipline the children.
Okay. Last question, and this one's important. What is your ballot number and what is your website address for those who would like to learn more about you?
Yes. So my ballot number is 84, and my website is Vote for LaKeisha. That's vote, the number 4, LaKeisha, LaKeisha.
Great. So people can find out more about you and your platform by visiting your website.
Yes.
I'm afraid that looks like that's all the time we have left for this interview and for today. Thank you for joining us on the show today, and we look forward to airing the program and letting everyone know more about you and your opponent, Judge D'Souza. Thank all of you for joining us for this episode of John Redmann, Power of Attorney. We hope these interviews helped you get to know the candidates so you are in a better position to vote better. Remember to keep updated through your local news and online resources as to the current COVID guidelines for voting at your designated ballot station and in voting practices. And remember, you can view this show and any of our shows at johnredmannpoa.com. Be on the lookout for more special election episodes of John Redmann, Power of Attorney. There are many other local races happening on November 3rd. Find out where to vote, what's on your ballot, and much more by visiting govotela.org. Stay safe. Get out there to vote on November 3rd. I'm your host, John Redmann, and I look forward to seeing you next time on this show. Thanks very much.